Chit Chat is sponsored by Fun Again Games, where everyone is welcome at our table, and your source for hard-to-find imports, liquidation games, new releases, and much more. Be sure to visit funagain.com to check it out. On episode 89 of Chit Chat, we take our turns talking about board game etiquette. Do you have rules for your table, and do your friends come to the table with a healthy respect for everyone having fun? Well, as long as we're all here to have fun, let's talk about some board games. Welcome back to Chit Chat. This is episode 89, and this episode we're going to be talking all about board game etiquette. And it's going to span everything. We brought this category up, or this topic up last episode. Yeah. Emily brought it up. And we thought, you know what? Let's talk about it. It's a broad category. There's different things you can do at the table, things you shouldn't do at the table. And we're going to discuss who all here is guilty or innocent of some of those
Well, before
things.
we get started, first of all, etiquette. I want to make sure everybody's sitting up straight, facing forward, okay?
Oh, wow.
Make sure we don't have any arches in our
Are we getting out the ruler to measure posture?
Excuse me, sir. Would you please sit up, young man?
I have maybe some of the worst posture.
No,
I know that.
I win the worst posture
Yeah,
award
actually,
for
you probably
sure. I
do,
slouch quite a bit. So now I'm going to be very, very conscious about it this whole episode.
It's interesting when people do remind you of it, you actually do straighten up.
Yes,
oh, for sure.
Definitely.
You know, not to digress, but they sell things now that like go bzzzt, or like I don't know if they shock you or something.
Yeah.
But they're like, oh yeah, I better sit up straight.
Yeah, let's not go too deep into conditioning.
I'm gonna get those for everyone at the board game table.
Right.
Every time they get their phone out,
That's
a little.
the kind of etiquette we're talking about.
There's something there though for board.
And one piece of etiquette is not to get sidetracked on topics, which we just did. But before we talk about all the etiquette in the world, we do have a winner from last time. Ryan, do you remember the name of the winner?
I do remember the name of the
And who is it?
The name of the winner is Daniel Brown. Congratulations.
You won Origins.
You won Origins First Builders, which is a great game coming out later this year. So please email us at manvsmeeple@gmail.com to claim your prize. And next week we're giving away, or this week we're giving away Quest.
Yeah, Quest.
From Indie Boards and Cards.
Indie Boards and Cards. This is a kind of a reimagining or reprint, if you will, of Avalon with some minor differences.
Well, so I think new artwork too, right?
Oh, the artwork's fantastic.
Fantastic.
Great artwork. That was, if we're being honest, now we can talk about it. I've never liked the artwork for Avalon.
Yeah, really.
That has always been my biggest issue. So Quest looks fantastic.
Yeah, I can't remember the name of the artist, but they also did sort of the Brazilian version of Coup a long time ago. He did the artwork for that. Yeah. And they had him do
that
the artwork
version
for
is
Quest.
fantastic.
Yeah, I love that art. It's really, really good. So comment below for your chance to win Quest. And now we're going to talk about board game etiquette. Does anyone have a category of etiquette that you'd start with?
Oh
Ryan?
my gosh, I have so many categories of etiquette.
Oh, bring it on.
Well, listen, I know why you're looking at me, and anyone that's ever played a game with me knows that I have a tendency to check my phone during a game when it's not my turn.
What?
He's nipping
I'm
this
nipping
in the
that
bud.
because I know that about myself, and like it's a very difficult position for me because I know I do it and I know I shouldn't, and I know what I'm like. I know why, because sometimes I check out on games when it's not my turn.
Okay.
Like I will completely mentally check out, which is why I like to play games that keep me engaged, where you have to do things. And I'm not saying that this is why people are on their phones. Some people are just playing games, mobile games, and that's more important to them than the game they're playing. And you got to say their name 6 times to get them to take their turn. I know I check out.
Do you realize that sometimes I think, and this is something that we could just talk about overall, do you think that I often sometimes see that, and then I hear those same people talk about there's too much AP in the game. And I feel like those are the people who contribute to the AP experience because they don't remember they don't see the state of the board game, or they become frustrated because so much of the board game state has changed because they weren't paying attention the whole time. And they don't necessarily, it doesn't mean they're also good at strategy either. Yeah. So now all of a sudden they're like, I don't even know what to do all over again. It's like a hard reset.
I think that leads, that's definitely for me, I don't have a problem with people being on their phones at the table because I know that I'm guilty. Right, because I know that I'm guilty of it, so I can't say anything. But you're correct. It does become an issue when it gets to their turn and they've been on their phone the whole time, and then they stop, and then their first question is, "Oh wait, so what happened?" And then you need to go back and you need to tell them everything you took, and then they take 10 minutes to decide their turn.
Now, I'm a phone offender.
That's not something I'll ever do.
But I'm a phone offender, but I'm also the rules teacher.
Right.
So I know the rules, and I'm the one that's kind of holding the keep of that. So I'm taking pictures. I'm trying to do things for social media at the same time. It's not an excuse, but I do it. So sometimes I do mess up. But I'm so busy losing as well, so I don't necessarily.
He's looking for sympathy now.
Don't necessarily pose a threat to the game state as much, other than doing random stuff to make for the fact I wasn't paying attention. So that's a thing. My etiquette contribution would probably be food. Mm-hmm. I know how some gamers feel about food at the table, whatever. I don't care at all. I'm sorry.
You're that guy that's eating the Cheetos while you're playing the game.
We're eating chips, dip. We're drinking. We're having all kinds of food. It is. You come to my house, you get to be the animal you want to be at our table.
I have a question for you though. Yeah. If you're somewhere else, are you cool with adapting to?
I would never. I would sit up with my back straight. and eat. I would put on a bib. And I would eat proper.
Because I asked this question as someone who wants to put coasters down for sure.
Yeah. Right.
And when someone puts their drink really close to the edge of the table, I'm like, or maybe stick it in a little further. That's
We're
me.
talking white gloves, everything. I'm literally putting on white silk gloves. And,
I think that you bring up a good point because I think that the etiquette there, I don't think is necessarily like, are you eating or drinking at your table? It's, when you come to somebody else's play space with somebody else's game, are you willing to follow their rules?
Yes.
Like if it's your game in your house, man, snack away. Mm-hmm. Eat your pretzels and get the salt all over the board game. It doesn't matter.
Don't even say that, please.
I can't even think
I don't know
about
what the visual in my head.
Like if you have to wipe down your game every time,
that's the thing.
Whatever.
We're also assuming, I assume people are adults and they are paying attention to how I keep my games, even though I'm very loose with how I do my games. But the people I deal with are respectful. Yeah. We're all having a good time. We're all eating. But I don't protect my board games like other people would do. I just play my board games. They're meant to be played, and I don't sleeve all my cards and all that stuff like that, like a lot of people do, and that's totally fine. I just know that at my house, it's a more loose atmosphere as far as all the rules go. So when it comes down to etiquette, other than phones and sabotaging games just for the heck of it, that kind of stuff like that, that's etiquette stuff that I do not like. Mm-hmm. Or people who make fun of games because they're not paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and those things are all kind of tied together. Yeah. The respect and the paying attention. I mean, I feel like a lot of the complaints that the discussion we have around etiquette kind of comes back to those things.
Yeah, Emily, are you an offender? I assume you're not an offender.
Yes, she is.
I don't think of myself as an offender.
No, I don't think you are either. But
do?
I'm curious to see what you think, where you stand on a lot of these things.
So a lot of these things, I picked up on what Jeremy was saying, how loose you are with the rules, not just in the way you're playing the game, but also the rules of the game, right? Mm-hmm. And something we talked about last time, too, was with first-time players, when you're teaching the game, how kind or cruel you are during the teach, right? Are you going to tell people, hey, this is your first time through, so maybe you didn't notice, but this track looks like it's a really great option for you this time around, or don't forget about these points over here you could still score with, or are you just going to be silent, let them get half your score, and then be like, oh, by the way, I blew you all out of the water.
Yeah, well, that's a huge etiquette problem. Mm-hmm. There are people that I will not play games with because of that.
Well, it's definitely such a turnoff too, because it's just a different way of playing where you know that you're just being so competitive against each other, and you can't even trust the people to really give you advice. They give you advice, but it just ends up helping them or their board state.
You guys shared a story beforehand. Ryan, I don't know if you want to share it without names, but
I won't name names, or I won't even say the name of the game. But yeah, one of the worst offenses I've ever seen. Somebody was teaching a game, and this is a heavier-sided Euro. Well, I can say the game is brass. Whatever. And, I'm new to the game, and I've got a really experienced player teaching us. And there was a time in the game when I was thinking about making a move, and I was like, I want to do this move. And I was like, oh, wait, but if I do that, other players will benefit from it, and that's bad for me.
Were you talking this out loud?
And I was talking this out loud, because I went to make the move, and then I was like, oh, let me take that back. I was like, actually, that's a bad move. And the guy that was teaching the game was like, well, hold on a second. Let's think this through. He's like, if you do this, he's like, look at the initiative order. He's like, no, but none of us have the ability to come to this place. None of us have the ability to use this thing. You're the last to go, and then you are the first to go in the next turn order, and the next for initiative.
That sounds very helpful.
Yeah.
And I was like, I was like, smart. You're right. So I could do this now, set myself up for the next turn, and then I can do the action next turn.
Yeah. So you're feeling good.
So I did it. And then it goes around, and he's like, well, that would be true unless somebody has this card combination.
Oh my God.
And he played the card combination and then used the beer that I just produced.
How dare you, sir?
and he took it, and I looked at the other guy that I was playing with, and I was like,
Did this just happen?
Did that just happen?
I would have pulled like a water gun from under the table and been like...
Well, yeah, but he was like, well, you wouldn't have known that I had that. Idea. And I was like, well, you're right, I wouldn't have known I had that. But I was like, I was talking myself out of it. You talked me back into it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
So that you could take advantage of it. And I'm like, I was like checked out for the whole game.
So it's kind of amazing.
This brings
that was bad.
This brings up a broader topic, really. There's jerks in the world. I mean, there's someone who does that.
See, I don't even know if it was meant. Like, I really don't know if it was meant to be like to be a jerk. I think it was just like, this is how this guy plays games.
It's competition. It was like a competitive thing.
And that's the thing. There's some people who I think fall into the competition so much that they might, and they're not intending to be a jerk, but they get so caught up in what they're trying to do. And I would say there's probably a little selfishness at play here because they're not focused on everyone else having fun. They're focused on them having fun. And if you're all on board for being super competitive, sure. I'm not usually in that situation where it's cutthroat.
Because you got to be at the same level of experience.
Thank you. It sounds like you're suggesting I'm at a lower level.
No, you're usually the one that's playing with people that have never played the game before. Yes, that's true.
I'm usually teaching a lot of people. But to do something like that, I can't even imagine him playing that off as like, well, no, I was just trying. This is a teaching moment.
Right.
That sounds like it was like, I'm going to suggest you do this, motivated less about helping you and more about setting me up for my turn. That's a little crazy to me. So that would be a big turnoff.
Well, and so conversely, I'm going to call somebody out here. Conversely, I was at Origins last week playing a game with Chris, this guy Chris, I don't know if you're watching or not, but he is an 18xx master. Like, this guy walked up, he gathered a group together to play 18 Chesapeake.
Okay.
To teach it to new players, and like, he is a full-on 18x guy. He had a T-shirt even, like an 18xx T-shirt.
Love it.
Boy.
And I'm like, that's what and he's
all in.
He is all in on these games, but like multiple times throughout that game, he stopped us from making stupid decisions.
That's nice.
He talked us into like, well, hold on, you could do that, but if you did this, see how it's even better for you?
Yes.
And like, I can't tell you how much better that game was. Yes, he still won, which was probably going to happen anyway. It's very difficult to jump into an 18xx game and just beat the teacher.
Sure.
But it was close. I mean, we all came within like $1,000 of each other, which is pretty close.
It's also easier to be helpful when you know you're still probably going to be the guy who wins.
Yeah. Well,
but that is nice because I do think, I mean, I don't know that I'm that altruistic, but I do like to try to help everyone at the table.
I feel like you are too. I feel like you often do that.
But I'm not the guy who ends up winning still. I usually help people, and then I'm like, why am I not taking my own advice? But I just think I don't know. For me, that's just more fun. I don't like when people don't have fun at the table because then it's like my fun is based mostly on that. Yeah. Like if I won a game and everyone hated their experience, I would not have fun doing that.
Well, that game could have been completely different. If Chris had taught us the rules and then halfway through said, hey, I told you the rules. I'm sorry that you did this stupid thing.
Yeah.
That would have been a completely different experience. I probably would have ended up hating the game, and I don't know that I would have gone out and played another one.
Yeah, what tells me about Chris is his advocacy of board games is the most important thing. And particularly 18xx, right? This is a guy who's wearing an 18x. Right. He wants people to like 18xx games, like most 18xers.
I think that's a great thing too, is to be an advocate for board games.
Right.
Like when you bring new people into a board game group and crush them.
Oh yeah, they're not going to come back. Why would they come back?
Yeah. And I'm not saying that people should pull their punches. That's not an etiquette question. Everyone runs their tables differently. Everyone runs their game nights differently. But you just got to know, like, if you're teaching a game to someone and you really take advantage and you find that like broken combo that nobody that's new would see, and you're like, well, I got 100 more points than you. That doesn't feel good.
Right.
Yeah, I think to them it does, I think. But.
Yeah, it's a balance, though, because you do want to still let new players make their own choices, right? And sometimes they're going to make mistakes. And so sometimes you have to be like, should I say something? Should I not say something?
Have you asked before? Like, do you want help?
I have asked before, but usually I feel like asking, do you want help?
Is insulting?
Yeah, it sounds a little bit like condescending. So I think I usually choose my moments. Like, I'm thinking about, we just played a game with my mom this weekend, and it was a worker placement game. It was her first time playing a worker placement.
Which one was it?
It was Alibari.
Yeah.
So, yep, that's the one I'm talking about.
That game was so good.
She made a play where she really wanted to do 3 actions in a round, but only had 2 workers. So one of her workers ended up not really doing anything, which happens, right? And it happened one time. It wasn't a big deal. I saw that it was probably going to happen unless she had something else up her sleeve. So when it happened, I was like, look, this happens sometimes. It's okay. It's not a big deal. But other times where like there were other things I was like, look, you don't want to buy this right now. Like that's using up all your resources, all your money. So I think some mistakes is okay for players, especially learning the mechanics of a game, learning how it feels. But other things, like if it's just gonna swing the game in a huge way and like now they don't have resources, now they can't do anything, I will step in and be like, look, are you sure you want to do that right now?
I think clarity, and I think sometimes you realize that person's like maybe doesn't have clarity on the rules. Yeah. Or they just kind of go like, this is what I want to do, but I don't know necessarily. They won't ask the question. So it's like you have the game spidey sense to kind of go like, I think they're struggling with this. But I was thinking of this where you guys are all talking about it. How about teaching? How do you feel about when someone's teaching the game and someone is asking you questions in the middle? I'm thinking of my buddy Scott, who sometimes he asks questions before I even like start sentences, or the person who grabs a rule book while you're explaining something. That. And I just think those are like two major etiquette things. Scott doesn't do that part, but I've seen people do it before, and that really bothers me because I take the brunt of teaching, but I'm also taking the brunt of like referencing. Yeah. And I'm the one that likes to reference stuff even after I explain it because I may understand the clarity by playing it. But I just can't stand it. I make fun of Scott about it all the time. Like, he asked me a question. Like, what is this resource? Like, what is this resource? Well, why it's there? I'm like, I haven't even explained the first two actions of a turn first.
Speaking of etiquette, I'm going to raise my hand to go next. I do. Thank you. I do have a comment on that because I teach a lot of games too, and I think and I have a very different perspective than you. Yeah. I totally understand, and I actually think I encourage the people at the table to borderline interrupt me if they have a question. I also think it's very important, and I'm not saying you do this. Now, look, we're all being extra polite to
Ryan, could you please take a moment to sit up a little bit, please? Thank you.
Thank you. But I think it's important for the teacher to make sure and not get so consumed with regurgitating the teach, and to make sure and look around for these looks.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. For sure.
You know, if someone's at the table going, and oftentimes I find myself, or in the past I found myself at a table where someone else is teaching, they're not doing that, but I am. I'm generally hypersensitive to that. Yeah. So I see something, so I will interject because I'm piecing together in my mind, oh, he's saying this, they're confused, I think I know what they're confused about, and remember this. And it feels satisfying for me, even though I'm interrupting, which is rude in and of itself. I will interject, and sometimes that teacher will be like, "I'm teaching the game. Yeah. What are you doing?" Yeah. See, I don't. But I'm also like, "You're not paying attention to the table."
I work since I'm a teacher by trade. Like I have ways of making sure people are involved in it in a sense. Sure. So I'll ask them, do they understand? Or I'll say, this rule is really tricky, so we got to pay attention to this one right here. Like, this is the key mechanic in the game. Yeah. Or this is how you score a lot of points. So I'm kind of making sure that people know that at least. Or I'll show a turn while I'm doing it instead of just explaining it as this is one action, this is one action. Because sometimes people need to know how it all comes together. Yes. Yeah. Just a little bit, right? And I'll say in the beginning of the game, it looks like this, this, and this. At the end of the game, you'd be triggering off this multiple times. Your board would be full, and da-da-da-da. In most games, you'll score 130 points, something like that. But I feel like once people start deviating away from that, or they're on their phones and all that stuff like that, it frustrates me. I would say
for sure,
right? It starts to frustrate me.
Well, I agree with that. When and I'm going to call out Ryan here. Well, on your phone.
Sure, that I've already.
When we're playing, I know when we're playing.
Okay, sir. Last night, sir.
When we're playing, it doesn't bother me. But now it feels like this is like an intervention.
Yeah, Ryan.
Sit down, Ryan. We have something to tell you.
Ryan, I'm going to hold your hand.
We all love you, Ryan. We love you, Ryan. I'm not just directing this towards Ryan, but when someone's on their phone while I'm teaching, and then specifically if it's someone who knows games very well.
Yeah. Right.
And then we're playing the game, and they ask a question that is very, very explicitly something I incredibly thoroughly explained during the teach.
Like that section where I say, "Hey, this is really important," or "This is totally different."
So especially if I landed on it hard.
Hey, this is way different than the other stuff.
I do start to get short patience when I'm like, because I take a lot of pride in if I've recognized that part to talk about in the teach, and this is important, so I want to do this for those people. And then if I'm, reminded during the game, so my efforts during the teach were for naught.
I don't know if it's for naught. I can't speak for everybody, but I can only speak for myself. first of all, there's a lot of cognitive load when you're learning a game for the first time.
Yeah.
But then secondly, when you're you talk about something during the teach, and then you're 5 or 6 turns in, I will ask a question. It's more like, let me make sure before I do this move that I completely understand this part of the game. Like I want to make sure that I'm doing this right before, because the worst thing is like you think you've got your turn planned out, you go to do the thing, and the teacher's like, well, hold on. That's not how that works.
Sure.
And then so I will often ask, like, re-explain this part to me before I do it. And I think, going back to what you said, part of the burden of being a teacher is to remember that the teach doesn't end when you close the rule book and start the game.
Absolutely.
The teach has to go all through the game. And so if you see somebody like early on doing something stupid, like making a move, I think it's worth stopping and being like, hold on. Did you hear that part where I said this?
Oh, for sure.
Like,
Yeah.
And stop them from having to ask the question, right? Like,
yeah, if you want it re-explained, it's one thing. If the person acts like it wasn't explained,
yeah.
But that's a big thing too, is when people just say at the end, like, "Oh, you never said that. Oh, you never mentioned that." Or 3 of the other people are like,
and everyone else at the table is like, we hammered that home.
We've had some bad offenders with that.
Oh, really?
We've had some real bad, and there are people that we just don't play games with anymore because of those behaviors. And it's like, man.
I was just gonna say, like, I'm not trying to tell this all up, but I feel like one of the things about etiquette, the major part, in just like any facet of life, is communication.
Yes.
The second you bring someone to your table in your group and just say, hey man, like, this is how we do things here. Like me explaining, like, hey, in our game group, which is my game group, we play almost all new games. Mm-hmm. Like, I just want you to know that. So if you bring a copy of, whatever game it is, Quantum came to mind. It's like, it's so different from what we do that it may kind of offend you if you bring the board game and we don't play it.
Yeah.
Here we do this. And I mean, those are just ground rules, but at the same time, that's what you set the etiquette by doing that, right? Mm-hmm. You set the expectations for your household. And then at the same time, like, then there's also me who was like wild and free as well. So it's like, you can't say that I have all these rules, but I do have rules and unwritten rules, right? Some people have different unwritten rules that they don't ever vocalize. And then all of a sudden we get into a weird situation because I think some of us all struggle with communication in some form.
Yeah.
And I think you can lessen that by having these open conversations right away, straight away.
I totally agree. I have a story that you guys made me think of where I was the offender.
Yeah.
How
dare you?
We were playing Villainous, which has like a little bit of a kill the king mechanic, right? Yeah. And so I was playing with my partner and my mom, and it was my mom's first time playing. We had played before though. Yeah. And we were towards the end. I'm like scared to bring this up because it was a big thing, but we were near the end, and we were both trying to convince her, like, she should hurt the other player, because we were both very near winning. Yeah. And I convinced her in the end, like, you should really hurt him, because he's about to win. Which, to be fair, was true. Yeah. But then on my next turn, I won. And he was very much like, this isn't fair, it's your mom, you shouldn't have done that. But I think it was what you were saying with expectations of, like, I was like, this is a kill the king kind of game. At the end of it, you just have to convince people to do it. Somebody's gonna.
Villainous is like that, though.
It is like that.
Like there's games like that, like Villainous and Munchkin, and even like Risk.
But think about what you just said. It's like that though, but some players aren't prepared
don't play
for
like
that.
Yeah, I have
a level of cutthroatness because I tell people, like, this is a negotiation game, and if you're not willing to negotiate, you may get crushed. Like I tell people like that, and I use words like crushed. You're going to get left behind if you don't do this. Or if you take too much debt, you probably won't be able to recover it because the game isn't built like that. Like I said, it's about how you communicate. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, people may feel like you held back some information about that. And that's not good. That's not a way a good teacher should teach.
I have a flip side story to that. And it's not my own story. This is actually, I've heard on Blue Peg Pink Peg a couple times. So Rob and Christina from Blue Peg Pink Peg, they have a daughter, Harper. And they've told the story a couple times, but I think it's very fitting. Mm-hmm. They were playing Thanos Rising with their daughter, Harper, and Christina's parents. And Christina's parents don't play a lot of board games. So the whole concept of cooperating was a little foreign to them, right? And like you just said, you have to make sure everyone, they might not be familiar with these games. Yeah. So they were playing this, and Harper's favorite character is Black Widow, bar none. And like, if nothing else, she needs to get the Black Widow card when playing Thanos Rising, right? Win or lose,
that's her goal.
She wants Black Widow,
her own personal
right? And this was when she was younger too, so she made that very clear when they were playing. And I think Christine's mom, I think it was, didn't still quite understand that this was a cooperative game. Black Widow came out, and Christina's mom took Black Widow on her turn. Yeah, and the game was over at that point.
Right.
But it was interesting because it reminded me of the Etiquette, because some person, she was thinking it's a game, and she wasn't familiar with competitive games. She still hadn't wrapped her head around that. And as crazy as that sounds to probably a lot of people that are watching this and us, there's a lot of casual gamers who still have no concept for that there is cooperative games.
Well, I mean, I remember the first time I ever played a cooperative game.
It's weird,
blew my mind.
right? Yeah.
Yes.
I think it was maybe Pandemic.
So I'm not saying she's a horrible person, because she's just thinking, hey, it's competitive and this is how we play. It's like not letting your kid win at chess,
Right.
But it kind of derailed the game and upset Harper quite a bit. But I don't know how much that falls into etiquette. But you were saying making sure everyone at the table fully understands, here's what you're doing in the game.
Right.
Expectations.
This is what we want to be doing.
And that goes back to what started this whole conversation, was about like having fun at the table, helping everyone have fun at the table. Like, should that be your mission statement? I know for you
it's my mission statement. If you watch the channel at all, I say it at the end of every video, and it's an important thing to me.
We all kind of have that same mentality. I think there are people that is not the objective.
No,
their fun is based on you not having fun.
Well, or winning.
I think it's really, I think it's really on winning. Like, they really are focused more on winning.
But some games, like people that play or like 4X style games, like their fun is, can they just crush you to the point where you're just not even able to play anymore?
Yeah. Well, yeah, some people who win a lot of games, I think sometimes they drift very quickly to, how much can I win by?
Right. Can I block your actions? And where can I steal from you?
And I even totally kind of understand and respect that that's where some people get their fun. What I would encourage those people to remember is the degree to which your fun starts to negatively impact others' fun.
Yeah.
And like, I play a game at the table where everyone else's fun is first and foremost, so it's always my thing. It's to my detriment that I do that in many cases, but some people aren't like that. And again, I wonder if that's etiquette. I just would encourage them to remember who else at the table.
You got to set the expectation, though.
Yes.
Like, if you're bringing people into your gaming group and that's how you play, and you're like, just be honest, I am going to use every take that mechanic I can use, and I'm going to take that to you like every single turn.
Sure.
Yeah, everybody knows I'm a super aggressive player, but it's sound and fury signifying nothing at the end of the game.
But like, you have to,
I will be losing by 50 points.
You have to
but I will have mucked up the game and been playing as aggressive as possible.
I know. I know. When I learned Target, they said, like, just so you know, this game is mean, and I know you're a new player, but I am going to be as mean as possible.
Right.
And it's like, okay, well, if you sit down and you know that,
yes, it's very different.
It's very different than like thinking that you're going to get a little help and a little teach, and then you're like, wait a minute, what did you just do? Oh, I blocked you, so you can't do anything this turn.
You say Target?
Yeah.
And that's a two-player game, too.
That's a
so
two-player game.
Whenever I sit down on a two-player game, I just assume it's competitive. That's the point of most of those games. Where being so focused on winning becomes a little bit more challenging is when you're sitting at a table full of 6 people, and then you have some of those people who start to like to pick on one person at the table, and kind of they start to have fun at their misery a little bit.
Right.
That's a pretty gross situation. I mean, we're maybe even off the topic of etiquette at this point and talking about just not being
it ties in.
Yes, it does tie in, I guess.
I mean, don't be a jerk to the other players. But again, that all comes down to what you said about communication. I think that is communication.
Honestly, it will always be communication.
If you can set that expectation and you say, listen, there's a really good chance that whoever the weakest link here in this group is just going to get wiped out and they're going to get blocked in. You're going to like not be able to play. Like Catan is a great example, right? When you're playing Catan with people, there's moves you can make that I can make in Catan on my first turn that basically cut you off to the point where you can't play anymore.
Sure.
And it's like, as a group, are we going to use those moves? Like, should I be encouraged to, or should we try to avoid those kind of moves and give everyone space to play? I don't think there's a wrong answer. I think the right answer is talk to your table, make sure everyone's on the same page.
And just so I say this is like, I know that like in our kind of within our realm of people, some of you are not good we're not as good at communicating, and I just realized that like that, just like a rules teach, is to your advantage, to like allow people to speak, allow people to tell you how they're feeling about the game. You want people to be psychologically safe. I know that sounds like the thing, but I honestly do want people to not be afraid. Like I try to watch the words that I say to other people when they're coming into our group, and also like I like to know their experience, so I kind of pick away at it and realize like we were maybe too intense at the table, or just using silly words, or like just I don't want to offend anybody. But you gotta like open that up from the start, so that it's always present, so people always feel like that they can express themselves.
Something. Right. I think a big part is like there's not right and wrong necessarily, right? It's just having a lot of patience, a lot of grace for people doing things differently than you would. Respect. And so even when you're not great at communicating, when you start to get frustrated, think about the fact that people are different than you. Different gaming groups do things different ways. Maybe you sat down and played a game at a table where you didn't have a lot of fun. You think, this isn't my table. Maybe I just don't come back to this table. Or you have a conversation and say like, hey, is this how you normally play it? Can I get used to this style of play, or is it still just not for me?
Yeah. But can we all agree that Ryan's wrong for using his phone at the table?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that.
We ended on that one, right?
You know what? You again set the rules for your table, right?
Yeah.
Set the rules. If I sit down at a table and somebody's like, hey, no cell phones. Everyone take your cell phones out, put them over here. Boom.
New rule at the table.
I like it.
But I'm serious. Like somebody says, no snacks. You want snacks? Yeah. Here's the little side table. Keep all your snacks on the side table. What the problem is after those rules, if you still do those things, then you are the one that's being a bad person.
No, for sure. And I've been guilty of that, where I've gotten annoyed at someone for using their phone, and then a text comes in, and I'm like, because I don't get a lot of communication like that, and so I do respond to it with someone who's texting me at the moment, because I don't get those aren't endless. But anyway, I was just teasing you.
No, I know you were.
We love.
But I think that's a good point, and I think it's all about setting expectations at your table. And if somebody is consistently breaking your table rules, or if they're not happy, like maybe they don't get invited back, or maybe it's just you have a conversation with them and say, like, maybe this isn't a great fit for you. You don't like Take That, and all we play is Take That games, and you keep getting your feelings hurt.
Yeah.
We're not going to stop playing Take That games because that's what everyone else loves.
So take that.
Because I don't want to say, because I don't like
That's a good way to end the topic right there.
I don't like Take That games, but I'm never going to say to anybody, well, you're wrong for liking them.
Sure.
Because I've seen people that like just
love it.
And even when they're on the receiving end of the Take That, they're like, oh man, like,
energizes you.
Yeah, you got me so good. Like you really got me, but I'll get you next game.
Yeah, that's
a perfectly viable type.
So we've talked. We've probably missed some etiquette topics, but we've talked about it.
Oh, we did. We didn't even talk about alpha gaming.
I do.
That's a whole.
That's a whole other category. I do feel like the four of us have come a long way. I feel like we should all just hold hands and
kumbaya.
Yeah, it's definitely a kumbaya moment. Anyway, we are going to talk about some actual games that we've played. We're going to keep this pretty short. We've played a lot of games since the last time, but actually we've played a few games a few times, not a lot of games. Yeah. So Jeremy, let's start with you.
So I'm playing Ultry right now. I'm three stories out of the 6, and what this game is basically you're these warriors. You're defending this castle, and you're trying to develop the castle, but also tend to these 8 districts that are outside of there, or regions. And you may have problems that arise that you have to help out the community, but then you may also have these little story cards of events that are going on in each spot. And what you're doing is you're taking 2 actions and going to those spots. But the catch to the game is that you have these, you're going to be rolling these dice, and you're going to be moving across this actions board where these cards will come out and things like that, and you're interacting. But the Chronicle book, this book opens up when you get around to that space, and it changes the board game state, but it's also telling a story. So like, let's say there's a dragon. In this story, there's a dragon. So now you have a dragon thing, and it's saying, hey, if this dragon's in this region, you can't come in here, and if you are, you get hurt and pushed out. And then eventually the dragon comes and is starting a fire, so then your castle loses its strength. Okay. But if you have enough strength, then you get some bonuses as well. Like the people hold their ground, and because they hold their ground, you get this prestige. And then like, let's say some troglodytes are coming up. Well, they come up on your board, so you can't build more buildings inside your, reinforce inside your kingdom. But if you fend them off and you get certain things, you can roll and get more successes because you guys have worked together. So there's a whole bunch of little different things that you're doing, but it's a heavy game on roll, resolve. Roll, resolve, roll, resolve.
That's the one thing I heard.
So
does that get tiresome?
So yes. Yes. In a word, yes. But there are things that this game does that you just go to say, hey, this is a lighter experience, but it has a really good narrative that it's presenting to you.
Okay.
So I was kind of iffy on it, but now as I go through, I'm a little bit kinder to it because the storytelling is what is part of the game. And I'm playing it by myself, and I like to play it with more people to get the experience of someone else telling me parts of the story because I'm the one flipping the cards, and I can partially see the solutions. So sometimes I'm targeting this to certain things, and I just feel like that doesn't give the game a fair shot when it's actually a cooperative experience that someone can play solo. So really interesting game. Like I said, story elements, a little bit too much roll and resolve right now, but they do have player powers that sometimes mix in there and do things right. Interesting game, beautiful artwork by Vincent Dutrait.
Oh yeah,
beautiful art.
It's a great combo. Vincent Dutrait
this
and
gives him
Antoine
an opportunity.
Bauza.
Yeah,
this is a good opportunity to let him shine as an artist because there's different stories with different art.
Cool.
I do want to play this.
And
that sounds great.
That's what makes it really fun. But yeah, I think it's an interesting title. No matter how I feel about it, I think it's going to be open to a lot of people if it becomes a well-known game.
Awesome.
What about you, Ryan?
Well, I hinted at this earlier, but I'll talk about it a little bit more. I finally got to play my first 18xx game at Origins, which I've been kind of building towards and playing all these different games. It was very cool to see how my experiences playing games like City of Big Shoulders and Age of Steam and Railways of the World, like all these different games that have different pieces of 18xx, but bringing them all together. We played 18 Chesapeake, which is like a good beginner one. Mm-hmm. And I don't understand what it is about 18xx games.
I love that you're getting captivated by them.
I can't explain it. There's something so satisfying about those games that I can't really put my finger on. Like I really can't. But you always feel like you're making smart moves. Like you just feel like you're always doing things. And because the way that the train routes work, like you're getting trains and you're upgrading those trains over the course of the game, and those trains can go farther and they can deliver farther, and you're building these routes and you get paid like, based on how many spots you can deliver to. And then there's like, the company makes money and they pay all their shareholders. So I'm like buying a lot of stock in your company that you're running because I know you're doing really well and I want to get some of that wealth, right? And there's just so much satisfaction in that. And I don't like money's just trading hands. People are buying and selling stock. Ownership of companies is changing throughout the game. And meanwhile, your train lines are just getting longer and longer as you add more stops. You can upgrade tiles. So you think a route's blocked off, and then you get a chance to upgrade that to like split off. And by the end of the game, you're getting these diesel trains that are literally they can hit every stop along your way.
Wow! So
there's this huge payoff of like I built this crazy route that stops in like 6 cities, and my train can hit every single one of them, and you just get this huge cash payout. And it just triggers like all these different Eurogamer elements in my brain, and I don't really know why, because the game looks dry. And when you're looking at it, you're like, this is like the driest game I've ever seen.
Some of the worst art I've ever seen comes from it. It's not the worst art. It's just the most.
Well,
bland.
they don't put a lot of work into it.
They don't.
There's no Vincent Dutrait.
Right. Well, I'll say that
we need an 18xx with Vincent
we
Dutrait.
Do.
18 Chesapeake was designed to be kind of an entry point into 18xx games. This one's actually pretty new. It's only about 2 or 3 years old. So they actually put some effort into like how the game looks and like making it look good and feel good, because they knew that this was like your first stop, right?
Okay.
Now I've done this. I'm like ready for more. And it's so interesting to hear the guy Chris, who I was talking about earlier, was teaching this, and to hear him say, okay, well, this is how this one works. But then you go 1846, and you know the rules already, but there's going to be some subtle differences. And like 1851 is like a little different in this way, and some of them have like stock caps, and some of them don't, and some of them have like different auction rules. I mean, it's just so interesting to me, this whole world.
And you're kind of conveying right now. I have a couple things to say. Right now, you are like a conduit of his, because the advocacy that's pouring out of your mouth right now for this is so intoxicating. Like, I was going to say, if you've ever wonder whether or not we're genuinely enthused about a game or not, when we sound like this,
well,
we are. Like, you sound like you just met someone.
Right.
Like, seriously, you're talking about
when you're looking at the game board, your heart starts fluttering.
You can hear it in your voice, and it's funny because we're all guilty of this. We did this with our hits and misses a couple weeks ago. We start talking about the game, And they're like, no, but then you
Like,
do
you don't
this, and
understand.
it's so great, and it's amazing to see you so taken with this category.
I mean, Emily has seen it now like 3 times. Like, I'm like the 3rd person in our gaming group because that's where it started. We had one guy in our gaming group who's also named Brian, actually, that started getting like really into this, and then he started playing 18xx games, and he started telling us, "Oh, you gotta play these 18xx games. Like, they're so good." Like, and really, like, he introduced us to Age of Steam and all these other train games that kind of paved the way to get us into 18xx.
It's that enthusiasm that will help spread it to someone
And
who may not have ever.
Exactly what
it's
happened.
literally someone could have learned it from someone else and went, "That's okay." But when you learn it and you're being told, "Hey, you got to try this" by someone like that, it's like when I played Cuba Libre. Rodney is exactly for coin games, like what you are talking about for 18xx games. He's now. It's like, oh, and this one does this, and this coin does this, and it's fascinating. And I have to say, it's easy to just give yourself to that enthusiasm and get into it. Yeah, because when I was done with Cuba Libre, as the two of you guys know, well, all of you know, I was like, this is so awesome.
Give me another one. Like,
we've got to play this one.
Well, I've already, like, people in my group are like, we should have an 18xx day, like once a week or once every 2 weeks, where we just play an 18xx during the day, like. Because there's several people now that are going down that rabbit hole, and I guarantee there's people in the comments that are like, I remember that. I remember being that thing. But the thing is, like, games like coin games and 18xx games, they need heralds like that.
They do.
Because casual gamers not going to just like go.
They're too intimidating.
Oh, this game's called 1859, the rise and fall of trains in Eastern Europe, like that, which is I don't think a real game. But like that is not a game that jumps off the shelf at you. You know,
coming out in Essen.
Anyway, so. If you play like, I think Age of Steam is so good, or like the Iron Rails series that Capstone does.
Or if you want a smaller version of that, they have Railroad Express by Forbidden Games, and they have Mini Express by Mo Ideas, and you can check out both of those that do it in the most simplistic way. There's 2 things you can do on your turn. You can choose one or the other, but it does a really good job of introducing you to the type of things that you would experience in that kind of realm.
Just kind of keep building, and you keep getting a little more.
So there are always ways to kind of onboard it. There's games that have this element into heavier games, and 18xx has those too, which lets me know that like I've played Age of Steam too, and I like the fact that those games do a really smaller way, very condensed, distilled way of showing you, hey, do you like this kind of stuff or not? So there's always those types of options in board games.
All right,
that's
Emily,
me.
please tell me it's not an 18xx.
It's not an 18xx.
It will be in a couple months.
Not. And I will try to keep it a little shorter. But I'm going to talk about Alibari because I was talking about it a little bit earlier.
Well, that's your gateway.
I mean, yeah.
It's another train game.
I mean, yes, kind of. But I was playing it with my family. I got it for my birthday, which was last week. And I was really excited about it because it did feel like a gateway in a way where my family, we love to play medium, light games a lot. Abstracts are a big hit in that game group. But this was the first worker placement, and I was very excited that like we got through it. It's worker placement, contract fulfillment. There's a lot going on. It feels very fulfilling. But afterwards, I was really surprised. My mom was like, I really like this.
Good.
This is really cool. You put the people down here, and there's actions you can take, and you can block other people from actions, and like the timing really matters. I was like, yes.
Yeah, exactly.
This is the kind of game I love. I love that you can like see how much I love it and see the passion, see what's so cool about it.
Yeah, I think you hit that one big time because it's the right game for it.
Yes.
There's another game that game was actually based off. It used to be an expansion. It was going to be an expansion for Snowdonia. So just so you know, like if you want to go backwards a little bit, you can do Snowdonia, which is kind of pleasing because you unlock the board, you're taking pieces off, and it's one of my favorite games of all time. And I'm glad that sequel exists, and it's more beautiful. So it's really nice. And it's about tea. There's conversations about tea that we had.
That's true. A theme helps that too. But I think worker placement, to your point, it is one of those mechanics that I think once casual gamers who aren't familiar with more enthusiast games try, it's one of those mechanisms that it's easy to like.
Right.
Yes,
Oh yeah.
Put something down, get something.
I fell in love with.
And the whole concept that your mom said too, that you're blocking.
Who's going first? Where the timing really matters.
Because as soon as those things fire off in someone's head, where they're like, "I'm going to go." Oh, wait a minute. If I go here, she might go there.
Right.
And then you're thinking, "Oh, this is interesting." Like you're feeling smart. And then you feel like, I'm going to go there because I think she is going to go there. And then you feel a little smart
Yes.
that you've like blocked someone. Yeah, that's a good mechanic for new gamers. Stone Age was a game that I used for a lot of onboarding with people because it's pretty basic worker placement. It's kind of one of the granddaddies of
I'd
worker
be interested
placement.
to see if it was the first or close to the first, because it had to have been.
It's got to be an early worker placement
I
game
wonder
for
what
sure.
the first worker placement game is. I played Stone Age and Lords
I'm
of
going to put
Waterdeep.
it down below right now
Right.
after the edit.
Yeah.
I played Lords of Waterdeep and Stone Age around the same time, which kind of like both those games were like mind blowing.
I can't
Yeah.
even think of what my first worker placement game.
Lords of Waterdeep was an early one for a lot of people.
Oh yeah, because it was. I mean, that game's been out for a long time.
I remember back in the day, this is before I was really into gaming, where I got Lords of Waterdeep and didn't realize what kind of game it was. Because it's, you look at it's D&D.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you're like, oh, this isn't D&D really at all. I
No.
mean, it's loosely, it's the
that game has brought a lot of people
My
into the
first
hobby.
was Pursuit of Happiness.
Really, that was your first worker
Oh,
placement game?
really?
It
Wow.
was the first one I bought because I was like,
Well,
it was either that or the Galler's, one of the two. But yeah, it was my
Like,
first.
the Galler's is quite a lot for you being a first worker placement.
Yeah,
I
that
went
For
all
sure,
in then
dude.
when I
That's a
first started
lot.
Yeah.
playing this.
What have you
Nightmares.
been playing lately, David?
So lately,
Bring it
Ryan
all
and I,
back.
on the live stream, we played The Hunger.
Oh yeah, go watch our live stream. It was great.
Go watch it. And it's not worker placement, but it's another sort of, I think, category that's good for onboarding that can sometimes be difficult to teach people, and that's deck building.
Mm-hmm.
And again, as simple as deck building seems to many of us,
Yeah.
when you try to introduce the simple concept of, oh, you're reshuffling your discard pile at some point and reusing the cards
Yep.
to casual gamers or casual people who've not played a lot of games, that is a very foreign concept.
Oh, culling a deck.
Culling. is
all
really
those
difficult.
things.
Why would I get rid of cards in my deck?
The whole
Like,
concept
I
of
worked so hard to
acquiring
get
new
it.
cards. But it's one of those mechanics that once people get it, they're like, it's a very easy one to have fun with because you're like, oh, I got this card and now
So-
I'm using this card.
What I like about the Hunger is easy to play,
It's fast and it's quick.
but it requires a lot of strategy.
Yeah.
Sure.
And
That's
I would
true.
worry about
So-
that for gateway gamers. Yeah.
I actually feel like Renegade has kind of built a little progression. Like Clank is easy, and then go to the Hunger, right? Like if you like Clank and you've played Clank, try the Hunger.
In a competitive way.
In a competitive way, because the Hunger, in Clank, you can just buy cards. You
Yes.
can buy every single card, and every card you buy helps you. In the Hunger, there's an interesting balance, because some of the cards actually hurt you, but get you a lot of points. So you need a time when you buy those cards, and you need to time the culling of those cards. And I think Hunger is actually great for teaching that element of deck building.
That's true. It's not a basic deck builder. It's weird because you're not acquiring nearly as many cards as you do in Clank.
You got to be very careful.
Hunger
with the
is
cards you
very
acquire.
tight. It's like a card here, a card there, get rid of some cards, and your deck isn't really turning into a monster deck.
Okay.
No pun intended.
Because
but-
you're vampires.
You are vampires. But yeah, we haven't even said you're vampires going out trying to hunt humans, and you're doing this from a castle in the middle of the board on this road that kind of spirals out. And you're wanting to go as far out as possible because you're able to score more points that way and get more things. But before the end of the game, you have to get back to the castle
Okay.
in order to even qualify for winning.
see,
and
it-
well,
the key with that one is for new gamers, we were talking about like etiquette. You got to set the expectation, because the theme, even if that person does know deck building, you got such a thematic tie in how this game's going to end. They may not be prepared for that part.
Oh, yeah.
They're so worried about optimizing their deck, and they got this cool deck firing off, and they're like, "Oh my god! Like I got to get back! Like you got to be kidding me! How is that even possible? You didn't tell me."
Yeah.
And that's the thing. That's part of why communication comes in.
oh
So,
yeah, warning people about
Yeah.
what a game holds is important. And then one other thing that I wanted to mention, one other game, the three of us mostly played last night.
Messina.
It was Messina, which we just got. I've played it, and I use that term loosely, 3 times now. One with a friend, one with Jeremy, who's also a friend, by the way. And, I just meant another friend.
Yeah.
And then Ryan and Jeremy and I tried to play last night very late. There may have been some adult beverages at the table. There is a lot going on in this game, and I know I say that a lot about a lot of games, but there's a lot of bits
But
in
this
this
one you're
game.
right about.
Yeah.
Yes. There's a lot of bits in this game, and to tie it back to what you just said, you have to make sure and tell everyone, here's what you are doing. We cannot not follow these steps, because when things go awry and someone says, wait a minute, what's going on here, and someone's made a mistake, it's very difficult to back things out of that. Because what you're doing, and one of the big culprits in the game, and well, I want to say this again, I really, really like the game. It's going to be one of my most anticipated games for Essen, which you've probably already heard about. But in the game, you're placing workers in the first round out in this map of Messina, which is built on these hexes. But after you do that in the first round, all of those workers are staying out there, because on following rounds, you are actually propping them up and moving them or leaving them on the same hexes. But before they prop up and get used, there may be other players who haven't propped up their meeple, and you can go to that space. So now there's 2 meeples on a space. One of them's laying down because he hasn't been activated. So it starts to get a little confusing in, wait, oh, that you haven't activated? Because there was a couple times last night where at the end of the round we were looking at all of our meeples, and there were 2 standing up meeples on one hex, which is a big no-no.
We can call that to adult beverages, but still, we do have a point here. It's
not possible. So then we were like, oh, when did we do that?
Right.
And at that point, you kind of feel like
you can't rewind that.
You can't rewind this.
It's so
the game, and again, not all of our faults, not all of the game's fault. I just would say
it's a combination of
you
faults,
have to follow the rules in this game, and they have a great aid.
I was just gonna say let's defend the game, because the game has player aid up the wazoo.
The player aid, if you just don't get ahead of yourself, and you say, okay, it's time for the cleanup phase.
Yep.
Get the player aid out, and someone says, okay, do this. Okay, do this.
Right.
The moment you think, oh no, we got it, and everyone starts helping each other and doing different parts of that, it's going to screw things up, because you have to follow that.
There's a very specific order.
Very specific order, and if you don't follow that order, things can go awry.
I agree. We'll talk more about this probably in another video, but the game is still good.
Yeah. Oh no,
the game is still
good. I love
good.
it. It might be near the top of my favorite from Vladimir Suchin.
It needs a teacher that is willing. You don't want to learn this game out of the rule book. Talking about etiquette, you want to come to your table having already read the rules, and maybe even play the mock turn by yourself before you try to teach it with other people. Yeah.
Ironically, when I played with my other friend, we actually did learn out of the rule book, which is the first time I've ever done that in my life.
Oh,
really?
wow.
I've never done that, because I've seen people at conventions do that, where they're like, they just bought a game, they open it up, and I'm like, that seems like a nightmare. Yeah. And I said to him, because I just wasn't prepared, and he was coming over to play, and I said, if you don't mind, can we learn this together? And I'd kind of learned it, but I still needed to go through it. So I basically read the rule book aloud as we learned it. And in a weird way, it was actually kind of helpful, because he knew it almost as well. He did. He knew it as well as I did, because we learned it together. But it was about, an hour's worth of our time doing that.
Right.
So anyway, anyone else have any games they played?
No, I played a ton, but we're not going to.
We played a ton of games.
You want to talk another hour? Sure.
And we talked a lot about them on our Essen Most Anticipated. If you haven't seen that, take a look at it, even though Essen is over at this point. Yeah. But until next time, make sure everyone has fun at the table and use that etiquette, and we'll see you then. Congratulations, you got to the end of one of our videos. Now, if you want more practice, just click on the video over here. It's another video. You might not have seen it yet, so click on it. If you don't want to do that, at least click on the subscription button below. That always helps us. And if you want notifications, please ring that bell.